This is the Radio Times. This is a magazine that is published every week, and it tells us what is on the television and all the different channels and all the different days of the week. Well, as you can see from this particular edition, they are celebrating VE Day, which is our special assembly for today. And VE stands for Victory in Europe Day. And there are a number of programs on this week all about VE Day. And one of the pictures that I wanted you to look at in the Radio Times was this one, because this is a very, very famous picture, and it's of the crowds in front of Buckingham Palace. And on the balcony at the front of Buckingham Palace, the King and Queen and members of the royal family would very often stand at the end of important events like royal marriages and so on. But on this particular occasion, Winston Churchill was invited to come out and stand on the balcony, because Winston Churchill was our wartime Prime Minister for most of the war, nearly all of the war, but not all of it, but most of it.
Louis's class have been learning about VE Day, and Louis wrote, "Crowds gathered in Trafalgar Square and up the Mall, waiting for Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister, and King George VI to appear on the balcony of Buckingham Palace."
Of course, VE Day wasn't just celebrated in London. It was celebrated all over the country because the war affected every single part of the country. And it was a day of celebration to mark the ending of a terrible, terrible event in the history of the country and indeed of the world.
In Belfast, huge crowds gathered at the City Hall and in the surrounding streets, celebrating the end of World War II. This is Charlotte, Owen and Isaac's great-grandparents. Their great-grandfather was in the Navy and fought in the Battle of the Atlantic, for which he was awarded a number of medals. Charlotte read about the Battle of the Atlantic and the huge number of sailors from Northern Ireland who were killed. She was very impressed that her great-granddad returned home safely. Charlotte had also been learning about Anderson shelters, so she built one in the back garden. The Radio Times certainly tells us a little bit about VE Day celebrations, and I'm sure the television programmes on Friday evening are going to be very interesting to watch. But I wonder, how did the war affect Methodist College? Did it have any impact? Well, I've been reading this book called Methody, the First 100 Years by Ronald Marshall. And Ronald Marshall writes a particular chapter about the Second World War. He says 16 members of staff and about 1,000 former pupils saw active service. And he says some people had left school and had got jobs, and they gave up those good jobs to join the forces. But he also writes, but a very large proportion went straight from school into the forces. And very sadly, about 101 gave their lives. This picture in Ronald Marshall's book lists the names of all those who went to war but unfortunately never returned. Unfortunately, we can't see the memorial as the schoolhouse is currently undergoing major renovations. We can see the quad where members of the staff received training in air raid precautions so as to be able to attempt to deal with incendiary bombs, and courses were pursued in first aid for the wounded. No bombs fell on Methody, but it was soon to play its part in the first air raid in April 1941. Ronald Marshall writes that the city suffered so heavily that, in addition to the hundreds killed, many more were left homeless. On the morning after the raid, the college offered the Whitla Hall as a refuge for people bombed out of their homes. The offer was accepted, and on the evening of the following day, the homeless began to arrive, having had no sleep and in many cases no meal since the Monday evening, 48 hours previously. The drivers of the trucks that brought them were in little better shape and were given immediate food and the chance of a short sleep. A hot meal was served to the refugees from a central food kitchen. They had had the chance to wash, and camp beds were ready, covering the floor of the Whitla Hall. The college staff supervised this rest centre by night, prepared and served meals, and made packed lunches for men who had to go to work by day. At the start of the war, Downey House had been open for 6.5 years. The principal of the school, Mr. Harrison, decided to organise a camp for college pupils in the summer of 1940. Games were organised, coaching and swimming and life-saving to fill the day, and concerts and other entertainments in the evening. The school was used to hosting sports days and fun activities, but the grounds had to change during the Second World War. In 1944, 2.5 tons of oats and 20 tons of potatoes were grown on the grounds of the school. Hens and ducks were also kept.
So today is VE Day, and there are 3 words that I think are going to help us to remember what it is all about. And the 3 words are celebrate, help, and discover. And the first word is celebrate. There'll be lots and lots of parties and fun events today, obviously held under lockdown conditions, so very different to parties that we would normally have. But people still want to celebrate, they still want to have fun. We have our birthday parties every year. Of course, we have a special time of celebration at Christmas and Easter and during different anniversary times. And those are great. They're very, very important for us as individuals, as families, and as nations and communities. It's really important that we come together. And it helps us to remember maybe some of the bad times that were in the past, but we're over, and maybe some of the good times, and we want to remember the best things from them too. So celebrations are a really, really important part of VE Day. And the second word is help. Obviously, when we remember VE Day, in Methody we remember the 101 who sadly never returned to the school or never returned to their jobs after they'd left. But we also remember those people in the college who helped to make the packed lunches for those people who were homeless and had to go out to work. We remember the people who put down the camp beds in the Whitla Hall. We remember those people who made the decision to use the college in the first place for the homeless for a few nights. Those people who cooked and served their dinners, and those people who patrolled the school at night to make sure that they were safe. There are so many people that we can be thankful for. I'm sure you've taken part in the clap for the NHS and clap for the key workers on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. And that's a great way of showing our appreciation for all those people who are helping us. But we can also help others. We can do small things at home. We can help out when we're not asked to. We can be encouraging and kind. It's not easy to do that all the time. I know it's not. But let's try to be helpful at home and be kind to all those who are with us. And that'll help us to get through these difficult days. And the final thing is discover. We saw Charlotte's Anderson shelter and we saw Louise writing. And over the last couple of days, I've put up pictures on Twitter of gardens, secret gardens made outside, and of videos. There's lots and lots of ways in which we can be creative and which we can find out what's happened in the past. I read Ronald Marshall's chapter on Methody during the World War II. There's so many things that I didn't know. But maybe you can find out about VE Day. Have a look at some of the websites on the BBC News website or CBBC, and there's lots and lots of others as well. You can find out what's happened in the past. And you can also be creative. Maybe you want to draw some pictures. I've never seen a photograph of the camp beds in the Whitla Hall. I have no idea what Perry would have looked like, what Downey House grounds would have looked like, with all the grounds ploughed up and barley and potatoes growing. Maybe you could draw a picture of that. Maybe you could draw a picture of the camp beds and people being helped in the Whitla Hall all those years ago. So I hope you have a great day. I hope you have your own celebrations and enjoy yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. Thank you for watching, boys and girls, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.